Hey adventurers, so today is going to be another trope discussion video, and this is kind of one just me talking about some of my thoughts on it, not really breaking it down or anything like that, but just talking about why I like this trope as much as I do. So that's going to be the Lost Civilization trope, and so I'm starting to look through a whole bunch of different tropes and write down some various different tropes that I want to explore a little bit in these types of videos. And one of the things that I'm noticing is most of the time, one like the main overarching trope, for example, Lost Civilization, has a whole bunch of subtropes or things that are related to it. And I noticed it specifically with Hero. I think it's the hero's journey or prophecies, one of the two. I can't remember which one I'm at, was the other video that I'm developing. I've noticed it, and they just like there's all these things that are connected that really make the trope, flesh out the trope, help the trope become something more interesting than just, oh, there was once a lost civilization. I don't know what I don't really have a ton of notes on here. I just have some kind of like points basically, or phrases that cause me to think a little bit. Of course, one of the most well-known versions of the lost civilization trope is Atlantis, the Atlantis myth. And that's from our own real world. That's a real world myth about a lost civilization. Of course, there's things like El Dorado, there's ones in Asia, so basically you go across all the continents and there's these lost civilizations. Of course, those ones are real world examples, but I specifically looking at it in terms of storytelling. Of course, I love them in real world examples. Atlantis is one of my favorite myths. El Dorado is one of my favorite myths. I love stories that have this lost civilization trope, but along with that, there's like lost cities. That is a specific aspect of the trope, and then people groups who are forgotten. There's just a whole bunch of stuff like that. There's things that have been forgotten in the world, and those are the things that we're looking back to. And I really love that aspect of it. Couple reasons why it stands out so much to me. It adds mystery, of course. Like you find out about this thing. There's this there's this idea of a civilization somewhere, and there's something that is unknown about it. There's a mystery element to it, and so there's most Lost Civilization books have a bit of a mystery element to the series, to the story that's being told, and I like that. I'm not the biggest fan of just a pure mystery, but when there is a mystery element to other stories, to an adventure, or to a fantasy, or to one of these other genres, the mystery element elevates the story almost every single time, even though the mystery genre in and of itself is not my favorite. But there's also things to discover. I love discovery. I love exploration and just looking around, seeing what you can find, seeing what you can figure out, discover, all that kind of stuff. That, again, that ties back into that mystery element. But just discovery, just going and looking at something and finding something that was unknown to you before. There's new information that can be uncovered, whether this be in this ties into the next several of these things, which is whether it ties into the ancient magic or the cultures or the religions or the science or just old stories or monsters. Just like there's so much new information that can be discovered, so much world building that can be done by having this lost civilization trope, and I love that aspect of it. Going through these more individually, ancient magic, I love taking a look back at a world where magic used to exist, but now it doesn't, or now it has changed, or now the magic that is used is not what was previously known, and I love that aspect too. While I'm on the topic of this ancient magic, I want to bring up, because it's kind of ties in actually. I just finished reading Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and one of the aspects is that Victor Frankenstein doesn't rely on the scientific discoveries of his modern generation. Rather, he is looking back to the older scientists, the people who were looking at things and saying and propositing theories of why things work the way that they do, but they didn't actually have the proof of them. And so those were what built his scientific basis, and that's how he developed the theories that he came up with. And then as he grew up, he then later in life came to those newer scientific discoveries, and he built those into what he was doing, which helped him then create the monster. And just that whole idea that he was utilizing essentially this ancient magic that was forgotten, that people said, no, this isn't real. I love that aspect. That's so cool to me. Of course, cultures. We can look into cultures. Culture is one of my favorite things to study, and there's many times when I love exploring their cultures. Of course, Tolkien is the reason why this is the case for me. I read Lord of the Rings, and seeing the cultures of the elves, seeing the cultures of the dwarves, the hobbits, you just, they're so different, they're so unique, they're so interesting, they're so real at the same time. And I love seeing that. And I remember specifically noting that cultures is something I'm fascinated by when watching, I think it was the first season of Mandalorian. And he comes across first he comes across Kuiil, who is the Ugnaught, and you see a piece of the Ugnaughts culture. And then he comes across the Sand People, the Tuscans on Tatooine, and that's a whole other piece of culture that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were able to build upon what was created, and we knew that was there. Of course, some other authors like John Jackson Miller, I believe, is one of them. Who is that the right author? I don't know. Whoever wrote the Kenobi book, that's another, like, that explores the Sand People culture to some degree. There's been many books that have explored the Sand People, and I love seeing that. Of course, Dune is another one that explores the Fremen as a culture, and there's so many books that explore cultures, and I love exploring cultures. And when you get to explore an ancient culture that maybe doesn't exist or has been incorporated into the new world in some way, that is so fascinating to me. I love exploring cultures. Religions is much the same thing. I love seeing how people build religions into ancient worlds. And one of the books that I'm going to be referencing, and probably quite a bit as I get towards the second half of this video, is Lady Trent memoirs and the ancient civilizations that they're discovering, and what they're discovering about that. Who are these people? Who are these? I forget what they're I forget what it is, what they're called now, but the dragon people that they're looking back to and trying to see what makes these dragon people the way that they are. How are they thinking like this? What is their religion? All these things. And it's just so fascinating to me and so interesting. I just love exploring the religions as well, because that ties into the cultures, the science. I already mentioned this a little bit. You get to go back and look at science. Atlantis myths, Atlantis tales is a great one for this, because generally with an Atlantis tale, you're going back and looking at the Atlantean technology that they had that is now lost to the new world, and you're going back and seeing it, and it's completely different than what we have. A strange geography. You get, of course, you get these landscapes that are different, that are interesting, that are new, but that who knows what they are? Who knows how exactly they were, why they were designed the way that they were, or were they designed, or is this something natural, or is this the cause of the magic? And there's pretty much, as I'm talking through this, I'm thinking of so many more series. Of course, Sanderson's Stormlight Archive has the Shattered Plains, and why is it shattered? Why is it a pattern in the way that it's been shattered and stuff like that? And that's part of that that lost civilization, the strange geography aspect, and it's just so fascinating to me. And there's so many more series. Wheel of Time has a lot of ancient civilization or lost civilization aspects to it, including the ways, and when they're traveling through the ways, who created these ways, why are they so weird, how do they work, how are they so strange? It's so fascinating to me. I love that aspect. Old stories, that when you're telling tales of these ancient civilizations, and you're essentially using them as maps to get back to those ancient civilizations, to those lost civilizations. I'm thinking of Redwall with the Loamhedge stuff. It's so cool, because you see Loamhedge, in Mossflowers, the first book where Loamhedge, chronologically the first book where Loamhedge appears. And what happens in Loamhedge, or with Loamhedge, is you see the whole of Loamhedge, all the people who left Loamhedge and came across to Mossflower Wood in order to find a new home, and then they built Redwall and Abbas Germain and everything. It's just, there's so much to it. And then you, of course, throughout the series, you go back to Loamhedge and you go find Loamhedge, and there's these stories, there's these tales that are being told about Loamhedge and what it means and why it was important. I love that aspect of it, having these old stories that either lead you back to it or give you a reason why you might want to go back, or whatever it might be. I just love that aspect as well. Reasons for disappearance, like the reason for the collapse or disappearance of the civilization, you get to learn that. I think of Dawn of Wonder with Kultum and that whole castle and culture and everything, and there's so much surrounding everything about it, but you just start getting pieces of why maybe this is happening. Monsters, again, that's another aspect. There's monsters that are from the old world that we don't know what it is. I even with that, I'm thinking of Legends of the First Empire by Michael J. Sullivan, And there's just so many series that as I'm talking through this video, I'm remembering, oh, that has this aspect. Oh, that has this aspect. Right when I was getting ready to hit record, I had to look up, and I just Googled really quick what books with lost civilization trope, because I wasn't thinking of any, but now as I'm talking through them, I'm realizing, oh, that one has one. Oh, that one has one. There's, of course, Strange the Dreamer has a lost civilization trope. I mentioned Lady Trent Memoirs has a lost civilization trope. Dawn of Wonder has a lost civilization trope. Let's see, Harry Potter to some degree has one, although that's more of like an invisible civilization with the wizarding, the magical world and stuff like that, although there probably is some aspects of lost civilization trope in there too. If I were to think about it for a little bit, you could probably find some. Wheel of Time has some aspects. Mistborn has some aspects, especially even with Era 2, looking back to Era 1, that's an aspect of the lost civilization trope. Stormlight I've already mentioned. Elantris has some. Tolkien's Middle Earth has some, because, and you see a lot of those civilizations and you see how they work. Moria is an example of one of those lost civilizations, and monsters, and just like, you can go through just about any series and you can find an aspect of the lost civilization trope, and I love it so much. It's one of my favorite tropes. Another one that I'm thinking of, and I don't know why it's in my mind, but The Ember Blade by Chris Wooding has some aspects of that in my mind as well. There's a whole sequence which is kind of akin to it's kind of Wooding's take on the Moria sequence from Lord of the Rings, which Wheel of Time's The Ways is a take on the Moria sequence, and it's just, I love seeing it, and the way that it's done and why it's what you find out, and the atmosphere that it adds to a world is just so much fun. I absolutely love the lost civilization trope. It's one of my favorite tropes. Do more of it because I love it. It's just wonderful. It's just great all the time. So anyways, I think I've talked and rambled enough and just kind of gushed about this enough, but that's kind of, when I think of lost civilization trope and why I love it so much, those are kind of some of the reasons. And there's so much to it, and I just love it. I can't help loving it. Every time I see a lost civilization, it's something that really makes me enjoy that aspect of the story. Even if maybe the rest of the story I don't enjoy or whatever, I can still enjoy that aspect. It's pretty much every time it's going to be a trope that I enjoy. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. I didn't really analyze or tell you how to do it or anything like that, but it's just something that I really, really enjoy, and I love the different ways that it can be done and what it can mean for the different things that it can mean for a story, for characters, for everything. I love it so much. So anyways, that's enough. I've rambled enough. I've given enough examples of books with that have it. Anyways, I'm going to let that go. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and have our social medias linked in the description down below. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.